Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Jimmy. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Jimmy, it's going to be a fun conversation. You freshly got back from inbound. You've got all sorts of great knowledge. I'm excited for all the stuff we're going to talk about today. But before we dive in, let's get to know you. Let's get to know what you love about content and marketing and a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So I really cut my teeth in the B2B space with Gartner. I spent 5 years, a little over 5 years at Gartner, and started on the research support team. So really connecting customers with the right answers, whether that was research or a conversation with an analyst. Grew into a content and then into an event role at Gartner, where the whole, my literal job description was to help, Fortune 100 C-level executives deliver value through presentations and then help vendors deliver value to them through their presentation. So very, very interesting kind of role that I learned a lot in. And from there, wanted to kind of explore the startup space. So joined an AI startup as a director of content marketing, and then was fortunate enough to get a message from NewtonX and join them. NewtonX is a B2B primary research provider. So unlike Gartner that kind of does syndicated, secondary research, NewtonX does primary research. So helps you, B2B companies find their buyers, interview them, survey them to get the insights they need. And started with them as a senior product marketing manager and have grown to be the revenue marketing director, which basically just means overseeing demand gen, ABM, the product marketing function, some ops in there too. So kind of like everything except the brand side of the house. Thank goodness we have an awesome partner on the brand side, designers, all that awesome stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Love it. Awesome. Well, I'm excited for the conversation. I think it's going to be a fun one. And often when we talk about content, we're so focused on the top of the funnel, and that's really hard to track. It's an interesting space. I think that's why there's a lot of conversations around it. You have buzzwords like dark social and things of that nature. But often we overlook some of the needs of the content at the bottom of the funnel and really at that end stage of the buyer's journey and all of those things where, it's a very different writing style, a very different set of needs by the buyer, very different mindset even from the buyer at that stage of the funnel. So to kick it off, Jimmy, how do we look at the different kinds of content for these two different stages? At the bottom of the funnel for the actual buyer who's in buyer mode,
yeah,
how's that content different from awareness content and other things that we post online?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many interesting stats out there around only 5% of the folks that you're chasing are in market, buying a solution like that sort of thing, ready to buy. And what's the other, I don't remember if it was a Gartner stat or somebody else, but that was buyers are doing, upwards of 70% of their own research before they ever talk to a sales folk. It might be 70, might be 60, but it's a lot, right? More than half. And so what that top of funnel content really does is allow them to do their own research, right? Allow them to answer their own questions, allow them to just kind of gather information to kind of, make themselves a little smarter about the subject. I'm a big fan of April Dunford and her positioning podcast. And she always says we think that these people are great at buying these solutions. Oftentimes it's the first time they're having to do that just because their boss told them to do that, right? So we can't assume that every person is an expert in this and really have to deliver that content. But what I see as the big differentiator from top funnel to bottom funnel is it's not so much education, it's instilling confidence. And what that confidence does is really helps the buyer be sure that they're making the right decision from a professional perspective, from a personal perspective, right? There's personal risk in buying the wrong tool or the wrong product for your organization, right? Especially at a larger organization. The classic is you never get fired for buying Salesforce or, the major leader. So if you're not that person, how do you instill confidence at the bottom of the funnel in a way that allows them to make a decision and sleep well at night, right? And not make them nervous. I think, I just recently heard on April's podcast as well that one of the major causes, and I can't remember who the guest was, but one of the major causes of lost deals is actually indecision due to a lack of confidence. So it's not, we just didn't want to do it right now. It's actually like, I did not have the confidence enough to make the right decision. And I think that's really powerful. And NewtonX is an interesting place in that capacity because we are the new kids on the block. So B2B research has been done traditionally in a very, very like common way of these panel companies that build, panels of a million professionals, 2 million professionals that want to fill out surveys, right? Like, folks like you or myself that sign up and want to fill out surveys. I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of like directors or VPs or CEOs or founders that are like sitting on a portal waiting to fill out surveys. So that industry or our industry and that model has just an insane amount of fraud in it because it's all self-reported data. So when our buyers are coming to us, they know that and they're trying to avoid that. But at the same time, those companies are the status quo, right? So like if they buy them and the results are they're not going to lose their job because that's been the gold standard for 25 years. So how do we talk to them about what the reality is and give them the confidence to effectively step out on a limb and try something new that their boss might have never heard of, right? AKA NewtonX or, like whatever that solution is.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I love that. So tactically diving into this, what are some ways that you can instill that confidence with a buyer, especially if you're the new kid on the block, or maybe you're trying to change perceptions if you're a little bit bigger and going through a rebrand or trying to really change the perception of the market? What are actual techniques and strategies for getting that done?
Yeah. So, I mean, from a research company, right? Data, right? Like that's like one of the best ways because you never want to come across as like delivering biased information. So saying like, we're great because X, Y, Z. No. It's like, how do you paint your view of the marketplace and educate your buyer of like what the landscape is, irregardless of your solution, right? Like it's not about that we're better. It's about that the customer understands the landscape and then says, oh, now I understand why you are delivering more value or why it actually makes sense to try something new like yourself, like that sort of thing. So tactically, definitely information, like from a data perspective. So like a great data point is on average of these panel-driven research projects, 30% of the responses are fraudulent.
Wow.
And that's like that. We've run that through A/B tests, like blind A/B tests. We've had our customers run blind A/B tests without telling us. And that's the lowest. That's like on the low end is 30%. We've seen 40, 50, 60% get thrown out because it's fraudulent. And so that's not even a stat we can argue with. Our customers gave us that stat, right? So sharing that with somebody else that, has a peer in that enterprise level, we're talking, like Fortune 100 enterprises, they can't argue with it. We didn't create it, right? They're like, this is something that they told us. We're just passing it along to other folks. So that's a huge one. Another one is speaking to how they feel in the situation. So like as a research and insight leader, their job is to source reliable data, reliable information so that their teams can make effective decisions for the future of the organization, right? And so every time they're delivering insights to their teams, they're putting their name on the line, right? Like they're saying like, hey, Jimmy, and like my professional reputation is on the line because if I'm handing you crap and you use that crap to make a bunch of decisions and they blow up, you're going to come looking for my head because you just listened to the data that I gave you. So it's speaking to that like fear a little bit of like, I need to deliver good things. So the way I would boil this down to not just us is like understanding what your prospect or, potential customer is feeling like in those moments, right? Of if I buy this, like this is what I'm going to have to go through. And that's really helped us articulate this problem in a way. So like an example of a piece of content that we use in this scenario is called the true cost of bad data. And we have an article, we've got an infographic, we've done some, I think we've done a webinar, some speaking sessions around it too. But it's really just, it's not just that you had to throw out 30 or 40 or 50%. It's like, okay, that's step one, right? Step one is you threw out a big chunk, you wasted some money, right? Step two is if you threw out 40%, how good do you think the remaining 60 is, right? Like, do you actually trust the other 60%?
Yeah.
Okay. So then even beyond that, okay, if you are introducing now this compromised data into a business ecosystem and you're making a multi-million-dollar decision on that and just kind of like extrapolating the chain of events for someone, it's hard to ignore, right? You can't just sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, I love that. So let's say, as a business, I've got prospects and I love this process. You're saying, okay, cool. We've done our job. We've gotten awareness. They've been intrigued. They're considering us. Now it's decision-making time. I've got this content that is instilling confidence that we are a solution they can trust, that their name is not going to forever, be besmirched because they went with us. I don't know if I've used the word besmirched in a long time.
Tarnished.
Tarnished, yeah, thrown through the mud, things like that. So you've got the content, you understand it. How are you distributing that? What are some recommendations? Do you like to have that live online? Is that your social channels? Is it just being emailed to your reps? Like, how do you properly get that message in the right person's hand at the right time at that decision stage of the journey?
Yeah. So this is, there's so many ways, right? Like you kind of just like alluded to some of them. I find that a really, really effective way is just close partnership with your sales team. So I talk to my new logo team, every other week. I talk to, some of the sales leaders every week. I'm talking to a different rep every week. And that kind of allows me insight into what is actually happening on the ground. And, at New Next, we have a practice, we have a Slack channel called Ask Brand. And it's basically like our Ask Marketing channel. And anybody from the whole company can throw something in there at any point. And so we'll get requests, this is really interesting. We'll get a request from a seller and then another seller, before I can even answer or one of my other team members can answer, another seller will answer their question and say, oh, I've used this piece of content at this time. Here's the link. And it's been really impactful because we're creating a discussion around unintentionally or maybe intentionally creating a discussion around best practices and like knowledge sharing across like sales teams. So for me, when I'm thinking like, what are the best ways to do this? The first best practice in my mind is making sure that it lives in all areas, right? So you said email, social, website. It has to live in all areas because sales folks are interacting with people in so many different ways now, right? Like whole buying cycles now are happening on LinkedIn, right? Like just because it's a much more reliable source to actually get in front of a prospect as opposed to email, which, that's a whole nother, 10 podcast episodes, right?
Yep.
Yep. So I have to have content that lives within the LinkedIn platform so that my sellers can link it there natively and right there in a message thread, like that sort of thing. I have to have that content living in PDF form if they want to send it, specifically to, via email or that sort of thing, but also, having it as a link, like a landing page, like that sort of thing. And so from our perspective, it's having it across all the spectrum. And the key part of this process is then effectively training sales on what it is, how to speak to it, when the right time to use it is, that sort of thing. So that when they get into that situation, it's not like, oh, well, now I got to go search through Google Drive or Seismic or your tool or like whatever it is, like go figure it out. They actually have a little bit of an inkling of what they're looking for now. And they're like, oh, that worked really well last time. Let me go find that, but I need it in this form or, whatever sort of thing. So that's a best practice from my perspective. And that also allows us to kind of control like consistency and that sort of thing. Actually don't really do a lot of, I would say like hyper customized slides and things like that. We have our like customized verticalized slides, and within that template, sales can operate like really efficiently. So yeah, that's what I would say about it. I also think it's not cut and dry. Like it's ever evolving and changing. 5 years ago, we would have been like, oh, email, it's just email, right? And now it's like, no, it's not. It's all in all different places.
I love that. So we're out of time today, but before we end, I just want to put in 2 cents because there's something that you called out that is amazing. Training can go so far, and that's great, regardless of where it lives or whatever it is, what format, but you've built this culture where people don't feel stupid asking questions on a Slack channel.
Yeah.
And that is amazing because that is this ever-growing, ever-training atmosphere where people are assisting and helping because content doesn't stay the same. Like even if you train a new employee, here's great content, here's where it's at, all that stuff. 2 weeks later, there's 3 new files and your training is now obsolete, right? So having that really healthy culture of having sales and marketing on a common Slack channel where marketing doesn't even have to answer sometimes. Sales is piping up, oh, hey, I love this piece. Oh, hey, I have a struggle. Any clue where I could do this or how I should answer that question? There is like this sense of culture that I feel like you have nailed that really is really powerful. And I think that's a huge call out for all of this is, can you establish that culture where people feel comfortable asking questions? So I love that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I've never quite thought about it in those terms because I think it's baked into like the Nutanix DNA a little bit of like that vulnerability and just like authenticity and, across the org, just wanting to make it better for everybody. And that's been a cool part of it. So yeah, thanks. It's a cool call out. It's a really great way to frame it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Jimmy, we're out of time, but if anyone wants to continue the conversation and connect with you online, how and where can they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best one right now. I'm finding just a ton of great content there, a lot of great connections, especially after Inbound. My inbox is blowing up and, super excited to kind of, share more about that. But yeah, LinkedIn's great. I think it's just like Jimmy-Coonan on there or something like that. So yeah, that's the best spot.
Awesome. Well, Jimmy, again, thanks for the time and insights today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.